Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to episode 98 of the iPad Podcast. This is Lex at Mac's Future. It's Friday, May 4th, and I didn't record earlier in the week. I was kind of busy, so let's pick it up where we left off in terms of iPad news and stuff like that. So remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast, and you can help it out by giving it a positive review in the iTunes Store or on YouTube or on Blip TV. So thanks for listening. Okay, so let's talk about the first story, which came out on May 1st. Apparently, Walmart is now a major seller of Apple iPads, and I didn't realize this, but it's apparently one of the biggest sellers. It says here in the Mac Observer that came out on May 1st that Walmart is third only to Apple and Best Buy in February iPad sales. And there's a pie chart there that shows the breakdown. And basically Apple sells 26% of all iPads in February. Best Buy sells 24% and Walmart 11%, followed by Amazon, other, Target, and then wholesalers. So that's kind of interesting. So if you're looking for a place to buy, you never know. Walmart might have some sort of discounts. So I didn't realize they're such a big seller. Here's another story from PC Magazine that came out April 26 that shows what kind of inroads that the iPad is making in the enterprise market. And it says that iPad made up 97% of enterprise tablet activation in Q1. Really, what else is anyone going to buy? There's really not any great Android devices, and the Kindle Fire is too small. And I think until Windows 8 comes out, we're not going to really see any real competition to tablets in the enterprise. Now, Windows 8, which can run on ARM tablets, should be very interesting because Microsoft and Windows already has a massive foothold in the enterprise market. And in fact, this article in PCMag says about as much. It says with Windows 8, quote, with Windows 8, we expect more competition for Apple and iPad in the enterprise tablet space, especially for proactive company-owned device deployments, quote, John Herma of Good Technologies, Senior Vice President of Corporate Strategy, said. So, you know, if I was Microsoft, I'd race to get these Windows 8 tablets in the enterprise because I think right now with third generation iPad, a lot of workplaces, government, big companies, schools are going to be buying the iPad to use in the enterprise. So I'm not surprised. Okay, so here's another story that's kind of interesting about how service places like hotels are using iPads, and it's in USAToday travel section. And apparently the famous Bel-Air Hotel revolutionizes room service using the iPad. And it says here the iPad has revolutionized the way guests order room service at the swanky Hotel Bel-Air in the Bel-Air neighborhood of LA. And it says guests no longer need to pick up a paper menu sitting on their desk and call in their order. And instead, they can use the iPad to do it. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I think they're going to have a huge advantage, Apple, as more and more places adopt the iPad as an interface, and as there's apps that do that. And it goes on to say here, the Hotel Bel-Air requires guests to place a room service order at least 30 minutes before they want it delivered. It says in many cases the iPad orders help the kitchen plan better since the majority of the orders are made in advance of the 30-minute minimum time requirement. So they also say there's a learning curve. They say adapting the iPad for room service wasn't without problems. In the beginning, guests would sometimes find that their hotel room iPad didn't work when they entered the room, requiring a phone call. And they said the key was requiring training. And they also go on about the future use for the iPad. They said in the future, Bel-Air guests will be able to conduct more hotel business on the iPad, such as placing a reservation for a facial or massage, and perhaps ordering items from the retail shop. So this could be a big trend where the iPad is used sort of as an interface to further services in hotels and other service establishments. So, it's very cool. Okay, so it's interesting who's buying the iPad, and the CNET has an interesting story that came out on April 26. It says a quarter of iPad owners say it's their first Apple device. So this is great because this means that the iPad is helping a lot of people who've never bought anything from Apple be converted to Apple. And the article says the iPad has not just taken over as a big seller and profit driver for Apple, but it's also a major point of entry for customers. So this is kind of huge stuff. Okay, so CNET's story is drawing upon information from some place called the NPD Group, which released results. It polled 3,000 people in the United States in February. And here's a quote from the NPD. It said, historically, the iPod has been the introductory Apple device for consumers, with 82% of the owners saying it was their first Apple product. NPD said in a release, quote, this, however, is changing as first-time Apple buyers gravitate towards other product lines. And it goes on to say, quote, while over 70% of long-standing Apple owners began their relationship with the brand by way of the iPod, this number declines to just 57% among those entering the Apple franchise in the past 2 years, end quote, NPD said. And it goes on to say, quote, newcomers to the brand increasingly turn to the iPhone or iPad as their Apple device. Now, this makes sense because the iPod, which was the huge, moneymaker for Apple for many years and really transformed the company, is starting to fade because a lot of the functionality in the iPod is already in the iPhone and iPad. So if you're getting an iPhone or iPad or even an iPod Touch, you're not really going to get a traditional iPod. So it's not surprising that the iPad is a sort of a gateway to Apple for people who've never really even used any Apple product. 9to5mac.com came across a very interesting device that's being developed under the Kickstarter project, something called Brydge, BRYDGE. And we've seen better and better sort of cases or keyboard cases that work with the iPad that turn it into like a MacBook Air or look like a MacBook Air. So they found this very clever Kickstarter project called Brydge, and let's see if we can take a look at it. So Kickstarter, basically you can give money to be the first person to get a device that's being developed, and people who are trying to create hardware products or other projects, they try to raise money. And this Kickstarter project has 1,994 backers, and they've raised $448,000 with 30 days to go. So basically Brydge is like a case that has a keyboard on it too, and you can, I guess, get it for $170. It looks like the $150 versions are sold out, and basically it has the same sort of aluminum or metal feel of like a MacBook Air or of an iPad, and it sort of slaps onto it and makes it into a mini MacBook Air. Now, my only concern with that is that one of the reasons I like the iPad is that it's so light, and if you add this keyboard, it's going to add some weight. So on the other hand, if you desperately need a keyboard and you can't just do soft typing, then you might want to get this. And it does look like a kind of an elegant solution if you want a keyboard. Now, personally, I just have an Apple Bluetooth keyboard that I keep around in my office or somewhere else where I don't have a keyboard that works with the iPad. So it's an interesting device. It hasn't been actually released yet, so I don't know if it works well. And you might want to check it out. It's called Brydge, BRYDGE, and it looks like you'll have to spend $170 And also, I mean, this shipping for another $35 internationally. The 170 includes shipping within the United States. Now, the next story in PC Advisor has a very cool device that looks like it's coming out in Europe first, or in England, and it costs £120. But basically, it's some sort of hardware device by Hauppauge called myTV 2Go Review, or myTV 2Go. And basically, it's a device that you connect to your iPad. You connect it, and then I guess you can receive television signals. It says the myTV 2Go is a Freeview TV tuner for the iPad and iPhone, which lets you watch, pause, and record live TV wherever you can get a strong enough signal. The small tuner is about the size of a mobile phone and has a 6-inch aerial. It connects to your iPad via Wi-Fi, and the battery lasts around 3.5 hours. And it says setting up the device is pretty simple, but the instructions may make it more complicated. So apparently you got to connect to it by Wi-Fi. I guess if you connect it to it by Wi-Fi, you're not going to be able to surf the internet with your iPad while you do this. So I don't think it's hit the United States, but to the extent you want to get over-the-air antenna television. Now, one of the things that I'm not sure if it can do is whether it can then mirror what you get through AirPlay to a big screen TV through. That would be kind of cool. So, I'll keep a lookout for this, but it's called the Hauppauge myTV 2Go. And if you're looking for a way to get TV on your iPad, this sort of hardware device might be the thing that you're looking for. And so if it comes to the States, I'll let people know. Okay, so 9to5Mac, another great website for Mac news, had an interesting story about a jailbreak app that's come out that can make your iPad a multi-window iPad, because as you know, apps generally run on the iPad at full screen, so you can't have really two apps open at the same time with different windows in the same screen. But according to 9to5Mac, if you've jailbroken your iPad, there's a new jailbreak app that costs $9.99 called Quasar, and it's by a guy named Pedro Franceschi, and it adds window app management to the iPad, which allows a user to operate and view multiple apps by entering and exiting full screen, resizing, and changing orientation. So the article points out that maybe the biggest use for this are for iPhone apps that run on the iPad but can't get to full screen. So maybe if you have a whole bunch of sort of utility apps, like let's say you hacked your iPad and put like the clock app or the stock market app or the weather app. Well, you might want those running multiple windows at the same time. So, for people who are into jailbreaking, it's an interesting tweak, although at $9.99, it's not cheap. Now, one thing that's been going in the news lately is something that the Wall Street Journal and other papers have reported on, which is that that big crazy litigation in China where this company called Proview claims that it has the iPad trademark and has been suing Apple in China. Well, the Chinese court that has, allowed the suit to go forward is basically requiring Apple and Proview to mediate. So who knows, there might be the chance that Apple does pay some money in a settlement to this company in China that claims that it never sold the iPad name to Apple. Now, a little bit of the backstory: when Apple was bringing out the iPad, it went around and bought up the trade name to the iPad and thought it had bought the trade name iPad in China from a company that had the trade name in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. But the Proview company in China claims that while it's affiliated or even owned by those other Proviews in Hong Kong and Taiwan, that for some reason that the sale didn't cover China, and Apple hotly disputes that. And well, anyways, I think that maybe Apple doesn't have to pay that much money to get this little pesky company off its back. But on the other hand, Apple doesn't want to set the precedent of giving money to companies that it feels are shaking it down. Now, MacRumors.com reported on something that I've observed quite a while ago, which is that Apple stores have been replacing the kids' table that used to have iMacs. You could sit down, little kids could sit down on a ball and play with an iMac, but they're replacing the iMacs with iPads. And I noticed that actually months ago. And Mac Rumors had an interesting story about that. And it said that Apple has replaced the iMacs that were previously on the kids' table at its retail stores with iPads. And, I thought this was going on for months, but I guess other people are picking up on this. And it makes sense because really the iPad is the future of computing. I mean, when these little kids grow up, they're not going to be using a computer with a mouse and a keyboard or a hardware keyboard. They're going to be using a touch interface or voice dictation or even motion hand gestures like in Minority Report in the Air. So this totally makes sense. Okay, here's a rather magical story in 9to5mac.com about Disney, and apparently Disney is now outfitting park employees with iPads. So this is pretty cool. I mean, look how the iPad's really sweeping the enterprise in all sorts of forms. It says here the iPad will be the centerpiece for Disney's next generation Fast Pass system. It says here in 9to5Mac, the current system allows Disney park goers to receive passes, return to popular attractions at a future time, and then bypass the lengthy lines. And it says that now Disney employees begin training on a new system that will utilize RFID technology in the iPad to take the park goer experience to the next level. So this is pretty cool. It says certain guests selected will help Disney test the new process. It says the guests will book popular rides and attractions for specific times in the future. And when guests arrive at the ride for their reserved time, they will then wand their RFID band by a sensor, which will be subsequently sent to the employee's iPad. In other words, there'll be a cast member Disney employee. So it's similar, I guess in some ways the iPad at Disney will be used how Apple employees use them in terms of getting reservations. So if you've ever gone to an Apple store, all the employees are walking around with iPads, and if you have a Genius appointment, you get in a queue and they tell you just to stand somewhere, and an employee will come to you because the app that the employee runs shows who's in the queue and where they're stationed in the Apple store. So this is pretty cool. We all know that Microsoft is going to be competing with Apple in the iPad market because Microsoft's coming out with the Windows 8 tablets probably in the fall with different partners making the hardware. But it's clear now also that Microsoft's going to be competing with Amazon in the Kindle market, and that's because earlier this week there was kind of a shockwave when Microsoft and Barnes & Noble announced that they were going to be jointly partnering in the Nook, which is Barnes & Noble's e-reader that competes with Amazon's Kindle. And basically, Microsoft is investing $300 million into the Nook, which is going to be spun off as a separate entity from Barnes & Noble and have a minority stake in it. And Cult of Mac has an interesting article entitled, "Why is Microsoft Really Investing $300 million in a Nook?" And this came out, when did it come out? It came out May 1st. And Cult of Mac writes, yesterday in a somewhat surprising announcement, Microsoft and Barnes & Noble agreed to a deal that resolved their ongoing patent dispute, and they spun off the book business, and Microsoft invested $300 million. And what Cult of Mac says is a benefit for Microsoft is that the move ensures a Nook app for Windows 8 tablets and presumably for lower-cost ARM-based Windows RT devices. And it goes on to say that's just a minor point. And then another thing he says is, one idea that jumps to mind is migration away from Android as the Nook's underlying platform. It says Microsoft could contribute any one of its platforms as a basis for future Nook devices. Windows RT and Windows Phone would both be good candidates. So I think this makes sense. Look, I think what's going on is that, there's huge competition going on in Microsoft, which has been sort of faltering in the mobile market and in the ebook reader market, is going to ramp things up. So I think, Microsoft even sees the Kindle Fire and the Kindle as a threat, like Amazon's dominance with these cheap little tablet devices. And so, and Barnes & Noble definitely needed a partner to compete against Amazon. And so this is like a perfect marriage, really, Microsoft and Barnes & Noble. And I do think Cult of Mac is right that you could see the Nook migrate away from Android on these limited e-reader devices. People don't really care that they're not running an Android operating system, because it's not like you can load really powerful apps from the Android store on these, the Nook or the Kindle Fire. So as long as it can, run well as a e-reading device, I think consumers will be happy. And I think, I'm glad that there's going to be more competition in place against Amazon with the Kindle. And I actually think it makes sense for Microsoft to partner with Barnes & Noble to come out with this, Nook entity that's going to be competing. So it's just going to make a more vibrant market and I actually think that Apple is going to come out at some point with a stripped down, cheap reader that competes with the Kindle and the Nook. Remember, for many years the iPod was the iPod, and then Apple came out with the Nano, and then with the Shuffle, which was the cheapest iPod at $50 or $75. So I could see Apple making a cheap e-reader like device that's better than the Kindle or the Nook for, let's say, like $100, but it would be pretty limited. It would allow you to definitely read iBooks and other certain content that is not too data crazy or processor crazy. So, this is a big development. Okay, so next weekend, I guess the 13th, is Mother's Day, and 9to5Mac has an article out basically saying that a survey was conducted by something known as Tech Bargains, and according to the survey, 91% picked an iPad over flowers as a special present for their mother on Mother's Day. And, 9to5Mac says, look, Tech Bargains is going to be a somewhat biased source. But, I do think it does make a good present for your mother. It's kind of easy to use. I got my mother an iPad 2 a while ago, so it's definitely a nice present. There might be some mothers who are older who are not technology challenged, but I think it's a fair statement that a lot of people's mothers are probably somewhat technology challenged, and the iPad is sort of a gateway to a device that is not that difficult to use compared to a standard computer. So I do think you're going to see a lot of people giving such gifts to their mother. So it is a good result. Now, we were talking before about how Windows 8, which is going to be working on tablets as well as computers and has this like Metro style, could be competition for Apple and the iPad. But Cult of Mac had an interesting article highlighting some statistics, and apparently a company called Net Applications, a web analytics company, sees that only a very small fraction of devices connecting to the internet are running the Windows 8 preview, apparently only 0.11%, or in other words, 11 out of 10,000 people. And they're saying that a lot of people aren't downloading the Windows 8 preview. They're saying here that some of the reasons are that users don't like a new Metro interface and want to avoid it as long as possible, that Windows 7 is a much more solid release than Vista. that Microsoft isn't advising enterprise to skip over the current version of Windows, as it told companies still running XP to skip Vista, and that Microsoft hasn't released a solid launch timeline for 8. Now, this survey seems to be mainly about running Windows 8 on computers, because I don't think it's easy for people downloading the Windows 8 preview to run it on a tablet. There's really not a lot of ARM tablets that you can hack and put Windows 8 on. So I don't know if this is going to be a fair analysis in terms of will Windows 8 tablets compete with the iPad. Okay, so some interesting information came out, I guess, today, or actually, today, May 4th, regarding the new iPad 2. And when I say new iPad 2, a lot of people don't realize that the iPad 2 that's being sold now in the Apple Store is different than the one that was being sold before the 3rd generation iPad came out. Well, it turns out that the iPad 2 16 gigabyte, which is the cheapest iPad now sold for $399, is different than a 16 gigabyte iPad 2 that would have come out before the launch of the 3rd generation iPad. And basically it's been discovered, and Mac Rumors has a story about that the revised iPad 2 has a smaller A5 chip. It's a 32 nanometer A5 chip, and because it's smaller than what's on the previous the previous iPad 2, it has 15 to 30% greater battery life. And apparently the website AnandTech has gotten its hands on one of these new iPad 2 models, and Mac Rumors has a chart that shows the different battery life. And for web browsing here, interestingly, the Asus ePad Transformer in dock has 14.63 hour battery life browsing capability, and the 2nd generation iPad 2 that was revised can browse, I guess, the web for 11.7 hours, while the last generation iPad 2 can browse for 10.1 hours. Now, what's interesting is the 3rd generation iPad with LTE, by comparison, can only browse a web for 8.48 hours, while the 3rd generation iPad with Wi-Fi for 9.28. So that's a bonus for people who pick up the cheaper iPad 2. It's got even a greater battery life than any of the iPads. So that's something, to keep in mind if you're if you really care about long battery life and don't care as much about high, a Retina display iPad 3, that's another reason to get the iPad 2. And if you didn't care about storage, because remember the iPad 2 now only sells in the 16 gigabyte model. But if you don't care about high Retina speed, high Retina display, and you actually want something lighter, because the iPad 2 is lighter than the iPad 3, and you'd get better battery life. So keep that in mind. It's something to know when you're deciding what to get. Okay, so new apps are coming out all the time, and one app that has gotten some press in terms of people using it in school, I read something in the San Francisco Gate, and I have a link to that in the show notes, is an app that I never heard of before, but looks interesting in terms of note-taking, and there are lots of note-taking apps. And this one's called Paper Desk, and it goes for $3.99 in the iPad App Store. And basically, it's a note-taking app, and you can type in 58 fonts, color, bold, italic. You can, I guess, have your text stay in line, and there are custom characters built into the keyboard, and also you can draw, so you can draw and type. And there's a color picker, you can rest your wrist on the screen while drawing. This is important for a lot of the apps. There's 20 levels of undo support. You can import PDFs from other apps like Dropbox, and then you can export to Dropbox, Google Docs, email, Twitter, AirPrinter, and what else is automatic backups to Dropbox. and you can organize and bookmark pages and search. You can basically, the app allows you to create different notebooks. Now the paper app allows you to create different notebooks, but this one is much more involved, and it's a great way to sort of show what you have or organize what you have. So apparently it's being used heavily in schools. So overall it's a cool app, and might be worth getting. The reviews are pretty good. It got 4 stars. I see in one review, and I think the averages are 3 out of 5 out of 1,608 ratings. In the current version, it seems to be getting a lot of 4 stars. Let me see if I can find a bad review. Sometimes I like to read the bad reviews instead of the good reviews. Here's one. This person gives it 4 stars and says, or 5 stars, and says, "This is a great app. The only problem I'm having right now is with the font. It won't let me change sizes." Now, one of my favorite apps on the iPad and the iPhone, Tweetbot, which is a Twitter client, got a really nice update. It came out on April 30th, 2012, and Tweetbot is, I think, like $2 or $3 or $4. So what's new in 2.3? Well, here are the things. Tweetbot now, a new tweet detail view with inline conversations and replies. Swipe right to left on a tweet for quick access. New gestures and tweet detail to get back to the timeline quickly. Swipe left to right. New conversation view now contains both the conversation and replies. You swipe left to right on a tweet for quick access. You have the ability to email conversations or post a link to them via Storify when the conversation view. You have Droppler support. You have video thumbnails now have a play icon to differentiate it from an image thumbnails. Timeline sync bookmark icon is now an optional setting. It reorganized the tweet drawer so that the last 2 buttons have gone through some options organization, and it added thumbnail support for Vimeo links and higher resolution image uploads when on Wi-Fi. And you can hold down and compose tweet button to quickly open last draft, and also support for dollar stock links and improved email format when sending tweets. So it's one of my favorite apps. If you look at the video version of this podcast, you can see what Tweetbot looks like on the iPad, and it's very elegant. So one of the things they were talking about is now when you swipe, left to right or right to left, you get a nicer view. Let's see, and then you go back, and what's nice about it, you can have multiple accounts. Here I also have the Apple Feed by Mac's Future account if you just want to get Apple news. And you go back to your other account. I go to my Lex account, and let's see, if I tap here, you get all the information regarding one of the people that you're following. But if you just look at this, it's a gorgeous interface, and I think this is one of the best iPad apps out there, just because it's so elegantly designed. Let's see, if you want to draft something, there you go. And anyways, if you do use Twitter a lot, yes, there is the free Twitter client, but I do think it's worth spending a few bucks to get this $3 or $4 app, Tweetbot. So check it out. Okay, so Skype is another free iPad app, and it got a major upgrade, and I guess specifically made for the iPad. So it's now in version 4.0. It says new features are ability to move own video preview. You can also it auto restarts if it unexpectedly shuts down. There's improved accessibility, improved stability, and a new sign-in screen, and other minor UI improvements and bug fixes. So, this is really designed for the iPad, and Skype has been having problems lately. A lot of people who use it complain that it gets buggy, but if you use it, you definitely want to get this iPad app because it's a new user interface and it does look cleaner. Part of the new aesthetic that we now have in terms of clean, nice design for the iPad apps. So check it out. You know, it's a free service, so why not use it? Okay, so one thing people have been waiting for a long time is an iPad version of Spotify. That's that streaming music service where you can get free streaming music on your computer, and you could stream through the iPhone Spotify app on your iPhone and run it as an iPhone app on your iPad. But now there's been a major update on May 2nd so that Spotify now has a full-blown version that works on the iPad. So it's version 0.5.0, and apparently here's the things that you can do. You can browse and explore the Spotify catalog. You can get Retina graphics for the iPad and high-definition album art. You can search for playlist users and music, all from the same view. You can discover what's hot and find trending playlists and songs. You have an inbox grouped by user for easy searching. And you can use it as your living room stereo. There's full screen view and AirPlay integration. And also there's additional fixes, improvements. There's new gapless playback and crossfading. That's kind of cool. And then you can also have offline synced playlists, which can no longer be removed by the system. That's been fixed. So, you know, if you're into Spotify and you've been using it on your iPad, now you have one that's a full-blown iPad app, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so let's take a look at what the Spotify app looks like here. I've got the nice icon, and you can see now it's like a full-blown iPad app, and it's kind of simple user interface. Up here we've got the search. I guess does that search? Let's see, put Rolling Stones and what happens. Rolling, yeah, I guess it searches the whole service. It's pretty quick. Rolling, there we go. And you get, I just put in rollings and you get a whole bunch of, I guess, results. So it's a pretty simple layout. You got a search tool at the top left, and underneath that a what's new button. So you see trending playlists. Then you have an inbox, and I guess I haven't used it. It says share music with your friends. Tap the share button to send music to your friends. And then you have playlists, and I haven't been using this a lot, and I have some one-starred song, Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z, and then there's people, see what your people are listening to, and then settings, like you have offline mode. When in offline, only the playlist you've made available for offline listening will be playable. And you can also set the crossfade. I think that's cool, up to 12 seconds. And you can have gapless playback. And what's this private session? I'm not sure what private session is. I guess people can't see what you're doing. So, you know, it's a pretty cool app. I don't pay for the service, so I think you get more functionality if you pay for like a monthly plan. Okay, so one app that I recently got that really helps my iPad is something that I don't really run on the iPad but run on the Mac, and that's a program called AirServer. And this is very cool. AirServer, basically, you can get one license and install it, I think, on 5 Macs, and it basically turns your Mac into an AirPlay device, which is pretty cool. So you can stream wirelessly to your Mac anything that's on your iPad 2 or 3rd generation iPad or iPhone 4S. And it's really cool, and it solves a problem too, because let's say you want to make a presentation wirelessly when you're using your iPad or iPhone 4S. Now, you would think normally you would bring your your Apple TV, but the Apple TV does not have Wi-Fi built into it, so you're going to have to bring like a Wi-Fi router or hope that the place that you're using for your presentation has Wi-Fi. But here's the thing: if you bring your MacBook Air, your MacBook Air can become an ad hoc Wi-Fi network. If you go into your network settings, it doesn't work in Mountain Lion, but in regular Lion, you can easily create like an ad hoc Wi-Fi network. So then you can use your MacBook Air as the target of the AirPlay from the iPad. Now, why is this significant? Well, the Apple TV only has HDMI out. And so if you want to use your iPad or iPhone to do a wireless presentation, and the projectors that are being used or the displays being used by your venue does not have HDMI in, then it's a real pain to use the Apple TV, because the Apple TV has HDMI out. And it's kind of hard to convert that to VGA or DVI. And a lot of the old projectors in most venues have VGA connections, which are the old style connections. So you're kind of, in a bind if you want to, do a wireless presentation. But here's where like a portable MacBook Air comes in, because with the portable MacBook Air, you can get a Thunderbolt or DisplayPort to VGA dongle from Apple, which costs, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 bucks. Connect that to a monitor, and then use the wireless AirServer to have your iPad like mirror onto the MacBook Air. And what's great about this is that the MacBook, the AirServer settings, you can have it, if it senses there's another monitor connected to the MacBook Air, you can have AirServer publish what's coming over AirPlay. So it's a very clever solution for doing sort of wireless iPad or iPhone presentations that are hooked up to a VGA projector or even a DVI projector, because you can get a DVI dongle for the MacBook Air. Now, of course, you'd have to carry a MacBook Air with you. But the other plus of carrying a MacBook Air is that you might have much more complicated presentations that are on the MacBook Air. And so as a fallback to using your iPad wirelessly, you could use your MacBook Air. Now, what I hope Apple does is release an Apple TV that has Wi-Fi built into it, or one that could work with the Wi-Fi hotspot that's built into the Verizon iPad. I haven't tested that yet, but that might be a solution. Actually, I did test it, and actually at one point what I did is I tested a MacBook Air that was not creating its own Wi-Fi, but using the Wi-Fi that's created from the hotspot from the Verizon iPad. So that's a solution. So I guess you could configure an Apple TV to use the Wi-Fi from the very iPad that you're using, a Verizon hotspot Wi-Fi, and you wouldn't really need connection to LTE. It's just enough so that you can turn on the hotspot feature on the iPad. So anyways, this AirServer is also good if you ever want to do a video capture of the screen of the iPad. Now you can jailbreak your iPad and use a display recorder, but if you don't want to jailbreak, there aren't a lot of options. But one option is to use AirServer. The one downside of AirServer, though, is it doesn't capture your taps. It doesn't show your finger taps. But if you use the jailbreak app display recorder, it will capture your taps. And Display Recorder also does the same thing, where through Wi-Fi you can get a browser view of everything that's on your iPad. So the way AirServer works is this application is installed on your Mac, and then you get the settings here in your menu bar up there with other settings. And the preferences are pretty kind of cool. Let's see, here it says it supports AirPlay mirroring. This means you can wirelessly and securely stream whatever on your iPad 2 or iPhone 4S. You can choose what kind of display you want. You have settings for the audio. You can use the system audio. You can use the built-in output. You can use, in my situation, I'm using a mic. And, you know, you can check for updates. So it's overall, it's a good utility. And let's see, the cost, let's see, if you want to download it, a single user license is $14.99. But the beauty of that is you can install it on 10 different Macs. You can get a 25 Mac install for $59.99. And there's a student discount license where for a single student teacher allows install on 5 different Macs. So it's, well, it's cheaper than the $15.99, so you get like $3 off basically. So look, I think it's a very cool app. So another app that might be coming soon is something from the colossal of social networking, which is the Facebook, and there's apparently leaked screenshots that ZDNet had of the Facebook Messenger for iPad. Now, I don't use Facebook Messenger, which is probably a little bit like iMessenger, but it's probably a Facebook Messenger is just a closed text messaging thing within Facebook. So ZDNet reports 2 months ago, we learned Facebook Messenger is coming for Mac is coming, and now we've got leaked screenshots and information about Facebook Messenger for iPad. The app is essentially just a larger version of Facebook Messenger for iPhone. Frankly, I'm not very thrilled with the Facebook app on the iPad or on the iPhone, and so I don't expect much. I actually don't think Facebook is such a great service. The only thing that's great about Facebook is that it just has a lot of people on it, but it's not. I like Twitter. I find Twitter more interesting, and even Google Plus more interesting. So this should be coming out soon. It's called Facebook Messenger for iPad. So if you are into Facebook, you might want to look out for it. Okay, so another app I want to mention is called Remote HD. Now, I'm not really sure exactly how great this app is. It costs $8 and it works on the iPad and the iPhone. But Remote HD can do a variety of things, like allow you to control your computer, your Apple TV, your PC. And it's just like a more powerful remote, I guess, than the Apple remote that comes with it. But let me tell you why I was interested in Remote HD, because I read somewhere that it allows you to use AirPlay with a first-generation Apple TV. And I have a first-generation Apple TV, and you can't use AirPlay, in other words, mirror what you have on the iPad 2 or iPad 3rd generation. But, you know, so far I haven't gotten it to work. You have to hack your Apple TV and install something on it so that you can, you know, that Apple doesn't have, so that it can be recognized. And I didn't feel like paying. There's a couple of different ways to do it. Let's see, where is the instruction? See, well, let me see if I can find you the instruction. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so to get AirPlay to work from your iPad or iPhone on the first generation Apple TV, you have to install something on your first generation Apple TV, and there's 2 different ways to do it. One, well, maybe 3, but one way is to pay for this kit called ATV Flash, which is kind of expensive. I think it's like 49 bucks or something like that. Let's see. You click here. I'm looking on the support page for Remote HD, and yeah, no, it's $39.95, and it allows you then to add more stuff to the first generation Apple TV. You can go beyond iTunes. You can surf the web. You can create video playlists, all sorts of things. But look, this isn't a show about the Apple TV. It's a show about the iPhone and the iPad, and what I'm interested in doing is using AirPlay with my first generation iPad. So there are instructions for a free version, and it's not for the faint of heart. And so basically what you got to do is you download this free thing called Code at codegoogle.com ATV USB Creator. And this is a free thing. It's a Linux thing because Apple TV is Linux. And this is really kind of wild. You take this download and you plug it in by USB into your Apple TV, and then you reboot your Apple TV, and then this allows you to like do SSH installs. And this was kind of tricky because then you go to your computer after you've rebooted your Apple TV with all this Linux thing that takes it over, and then you got to go and type in all sorts of stuff. Oh yeah, let's go back to the instructions. That's what's missing. So then after you install it, you use your SSH client. So you go into the terminal on your Mac and you type host appletv.local, username front row, password front row. And then if you get in, and it's kind of weird because in a terminal, unless you're really familiar with the terminal, you're not sure you've logged into your Apple TV. Then you type in all this code. If you're looking at the video version of this, they have like these code commands that you type into the terminal, and it sends it over to the Apple TV, and it essentially downloads this remote helper installer. Now, I thought it downloaded this installer on my Apple TV, but I haven't been able to use it because I downloaded and paid for the $8 full version of Remote HD, and I don't know, it doesn't seem to work well and recognize my Apple TV. So you're looking now at a screenshot of Remote HD, and it's not really finding anything. So I'm not sure how well this works. Some people complain that it doesn't work with the latest version of the operating system on the Apple TV. But look, I'm going to try to figure it out, but I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Particularly, there's probably a lot of people who've got Apple iPad 2s or third generation iPads but can't use it with AirPlay on their first generation Apple TV. So stay tuned. If I figure out how to do this, I'll let people know. Okay, so one thing to wrap up when we're thinking about the iPad on this 98th broadcast of the iPad podcast is, what is the future of the iPad? And CNET has an interesting story on this 4th of May, and it's who wants an iPad mini, the story says, about one buyer and two. And according to CNET, there was a poll recently by Price Grabber, and they polled a whole bunch of people regarding whether they would consider buying a miniature iPad this year, and 52% said they would. According to CNET, asked if they'd pick up a 7-inch iPad mini that costs between $249 and $300, a full 52% of those polled by shopping site Price Grabber said yes. What do you think? Take our poll. So 48% are not interested, but half are. And I'm not surprised, because I think one of the reasons that the Kindle and the Nook are selling so well is because they're small and light. And so I think Steve Jobs is incorrect about his famous statement where he said that nobody wants a small tablet because your fingers aren't small enough. Because I've said this before, your iPhone and your iPod Touch are tablets. They were the first tablets. They're small tablets. and we were happy to use them. You know, maybe it was more limited. The screen, real estate screen, is smaller, but the bottom line is that the iPhone and the iPod Touch are both tablets, small tablets. And so if you have those small tablets, and then you have the iPad, which is, what is it, close to 10 inches in diameter, 9.7, there's clearly going to be a range of people who want something in between, something bigger than their iPhone and iPod Touch, and something smaller than the iPad. And I got to tell you, I mean, the third generation iPad I like, but I did not like the fact that it's heavier than the second generation iPad. I mean, I expected the iPad to get lighter. And I know that's a real challenge for Apple, to get lighter when you're using this high resolution screen and you need a bigger battery. So where's the trade-off? But I do think that Apple will come out with an iPad that's smaller than the current iPad and bigger than the smallest iPad, which is the iPod Touch. You know what I think they should do? I think they should rename the iPod Touch and call the iPod Touch the mini iPad, and then call, I don't know, have like a medium iPad and then the regular iPad, or the nano iPad. How about that? You know, you could riff off of the iPod. You could have the shuffle iPad, the nano iPad, and then the classic iPad. That would be funny if Apple riffed off of, with the iPad, what it did with the iPod. You know. So anyways, I'm not surprised by this poll. Obviously, people are going to be interested in the cheaper and somewhat smaller version of the iPad. So not a surprise. Okay, so that's it for episode 98 of the iPad podcast. This is Lex at Mac's Future, and thanks for listening. And you can help support this chit-chat-free podcast, commercial-free. At least the audio version is commercial-free. There are some limited YouTube commercials that run on the video version. But you can support it by just giving it a positive review in the iTunes store, or a positive comment in YouTube, or a positive comment on Blip TV, where it also exists. So thanks for listening, and see you soon.
This has been a Mac's Future production.